the votes are in, ladies and gentlemen, and a verdict has been reached on framewalking. If you have no idea what this video is about or what the controversy is, check out the video I did covering the issue in depth right up here. Oh, around there, probably. Anyway, I published my Framewalk video on August 16th, 2019. Before publishing that video, there had been some questions about the legitimacy of remapping for Framewalk. However, to me it seemed that most people were going to turn a blind eye to it. If I didn't give this impression in that video, I will say that I am against the advantageous remapping for Framewalking. My hope in making that video was to push the community and mods to have at least a discussion and a vote to come to a conclusion. The next day, an announcement from one of SM64's mods, Saxdale, stated a speedrun.com thread as well as a Discord channel in the main SM64 Discord were opened up for discussion on the issue. There was a lot of discussion, and for the next couple of weeks, many different members of the community brought up a lot of different aspects and views on the issue. Some good arguments were brought up on both sides, and it had initially seemed to be the case that Framewalk would stay untouched. As the discussion progressed, more people seemed to be siding with the idea that it should be banned in some way, shape, or form. On the moderator's side of things, trying to figure out the best way to hold the vote was the next step. On August 29th, Mini Corey, another mod of the SM64 community, announced and revealed a document listing an explanation of the issue as well as arguments that were brought up on both sides. I will link this document in the description. Voters were expected to read through the entire document and then place their vote. The way voting was done was not simply a yes, remapping should be banned, or no, it shouldn't. One of the points that came up a lot in discussion was accessibility issues as well as players switching to Hori controllers for throws. With all that said, these were the possible votes. Option 1, allow the use of analog stick to button remap functionality. No restrictions, basically keeping things how they were. Option 2, force consistent mapping. In order to maintain accessibility, remapping of controller inputs in SM64 is allowed, but it has the following restrictions. The remapping scheme at the beginning of the run must remain for the entirety of the run. That is, a runner using a controller that maps buttons to analog inputs, e.g. a box, must use a controller with that remapping scheme for the duration of the run. Swapping controllers to ones with the same remapping scheme, like an OEM N64 to Hori Minipad, however, is acceptable. There should also be no overlap on mapping analog to analog inputs or analog to digital inputs, meaning you can't have some huge controller that does have an analog stick but also a button that would allow for a easy frame walk. Digital inputs can be mapped to multiple buttons as it does not provide a competitive advantage. And option 3, ban the use of mapping analog stick ranges to buttons altogether. This option bans the use of analog stick to button remapped control schemes. GameCube controller on RAFnet adapter is allowed, however you cannot map an analog stick to a button, effectively banning controllers like a box or a keyboard. As you can see, option 2 and option 3 were both on the side of banning remapping in an advantageous way, but option 2 allowed players who actually used a controller like a box for ergonomic reasons to continue doing so, while also disallowing players from switching to a controller for an advantageous remapping. Voting was done by picking an option you thought was best, then the second best option, and the option you thought would be the worst. On September 5th, 2019, Mini Corey announced that the votes are in and that option 2 won. Here were the actual results. The best choice was option 3, banning remapping outright. However, this type of voting introduces something called instant runoff, where in a situation like this, that the best choice is not a majority vote, i.e. over 50%, then you eliminate the lowest voted option, in this case option 1, and for every voter that had picked that option, you take their second choice and apply it to the totals of the remaining options. After that tally, we ended up with 2 options remaining, and option 2, consistent mapping, ended up having the 50% majority. Now you might have some questions about this process, but let me offer this thought experiment from Mini Corey's article, which will also be linked below. Imagine that instead of 1 vote with ranked results, we'd instead decided that we'd have up to 2 votes. The first vote would be whether remapping should be banned in some way, or whether it should be allowed altogether. Then, after that vote, if banned in some way won, we'd hold a second vote with the same group of voters on whether we should ban remapping completely or whether we should force consistent mapping throughout the run. Basically, the benefit of having instant runoff is that you can take care of 2 polls in one go. Lastly, you may be wondering if anyone was allowed to vote. While the mods got together and excluded votes from voters who they felt didn't have large ties with the community and aren't actually affected by the results, it would have played out the same way even if those votes were included. So there you have it. Framewalking is of course still allowed, but now must be done with an analog stick, or if you played exclusively on keyboard or box, then you may continue doing it the way it had previously been done. As all members of the community would agree, the disadvantages from these controllers far outweigh the advantages. In regards to actually moderating the decision, while you can't 100% tell if somebody is using a remapping for a Framewalk, it's basically working on an honor system. And you may think an honor system won't work, but at this point, if someone was determined enough to splice a run together, they could potentially get a run onto the leaderboard that's not legitimate. It's just that players won't do that out of respect for the game, most of the time. Controller input displays and simply listening to the player's microphone will also indicate if a button is being mashed or if the control stick is actually being used. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and let me know your thoughts. Was this handled appropriately? Would you have done it any differently? I personally am very happy with the way that it was handled. Very consistent, quickly, well thought out, offered a lot of room for discussion, and very transparent in the final announcement. Shoutouts to all the moderators on the team. They did a wonderful job. As always, leave a like, comment, and slap that bell, whatever, as more YouTube exclusive content is coming your way, and we could be done talking about Framewalk now. It's in the past, it's over, and peace out. Bye.